How do strongmen fare in a pandemic? Turkey's Recep Tayyip Erdoğan projecting plenty of muscle these days, both at home and abroad. The latest, well, taking on the United States over the Biden administration's recognition of the Armenian genocide, siding with Ukraine against Russia in the Black Sea, playing it cool when EU infighting erupts over the Commission president's relegation to the couch on a trip to Ankara. Domestically, Erdogan again scoring points with hardline nationalists, what with the trial of leaders of the Kurdish-rooted HDP, and shrugging off outrage over Turkey quitting the Istanbul Convention on Women's Rights. But is energizing his conservative base enough? Where's the 128 billion is the opposition's rallying cry, a nod to money spent on currency markets to prop up a tumbling lira. We'll ask about yet another sacking of a central bank governor last month, one that has since spooked markets, and COVID numbers that could jeopardize the upcoming tourist season. What to do when the enemy within is an invisible virus that mutates. Today in the France 24 debate, we're looking at Erdogan's battles, and we'll be joined from Istanbul by Yusuf Arim, Turkey analyst for the television station TRT World. From Washington, we welcome Merve Tayrolu, Turkey program coordinator for the Project on the Middle East Democracy. Welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me.
From southern France, Yavuz Beydar, editor-in-chief of the news website Aval. How are you?
Hi, Francois. Good to be with you.
And from Ankara, France 24 correspondent Jasper Mortimer. How's it going, Jasper?
I'm fine, thank you.
The France 24 debate on Facebook and Twitter, hashtag F24debate. Yeah, the U.S. ambassador summoned a small demonstration this Monday outside the U.S. consulate in Istanbul over Joe Biden becoming the first U.S. president in 40 years to recognize the Armenian genocide. But plans for Biden and Erdogan to meet at a June NATO summit are still on. Jasper, let's get the latest with you first. I know Recep Tayyip Erdogan's been speaking.
Yes, he delivered a long harangue of President Biden. He said Biden spoke under the influence of the Armenian lobby. He also delivered a harangue against America's actions in war. He mentioned the dropping of the atom bomb, what America did in Vietnam and in Iraq. And then he said, I won't even mention what happened to America's Indian population. He also delivered a very long and extremely unusual account of what happened to the Armenians in 1915. When I say unusual, I mean all the historians I've read and listened to at a conference in Istanbul on the Armenian genocide would say that what he was saying was completely untrue. For instance, he said that the start of the genocide on the night of April the 24th, when 235 Armenians were arrested in Istanbul. He said these people were anti-government organizational managers. Now, everybody says that the people arrested in Istanbul that night, and I've seen the figure 250, were intellectuals. They were doctors, lawyers, journalists, engineers. And they were not anti-government activists. They were not prosecuted for anti-government activities. They were sent to Ayash, a town in Ankara province, where most of them perished. Then he also said the deportations of the Armenians were orderly, Mr. Biden, as if he had Mr. Biden standing in front of him. Well, all the historians say that the tragedy began because the Armenians were ordered out of their towns and marched towards northern Syria, and they were simply not given enough water, food, shelter to overnight in, or any of that stuff. You know, thousands of Armenians perished on these deportations.
Right. So contesting the facts, but no concrete measures on the part of Erdogan.
Yes, thank you, you've hit the nail on the head. This was the most interesting aspect of his speech. He delivered these harangues, but he spelled out no specific retaliation against America. He just said, we hope America will withdraw this declaration.
Merve Tariorlu, are you surprised?
Actually, a little bit, yes, because I do agree that all things considered, President Erdogan's response was actually a pretty muted one. For 40 years, U.S. presidents refrained from making this recognition of the Armenian genocide as a genocide because they were so worried about a rupture with Turkey, and they were so worried that the Turkish political elite would take this as a major transgression in the bilateral relations and break ties in an important way. So I think Erdogan's speech today, summoning the ambassador, these are all things, contesting the narrative, these are all things that we expected to come. But all things considered, he didn't take any major moves. In fact, in the speech, he almost said that he's looking forward to speaking with President Biden in June at the upcoming NATO meeting. So I think President Erdogan is looking forward. That really is his reaction here, and that is that should come as a surprise to, I think, generations of American presidents who so worried about how Turkey might react to this and didn't go through with this recognition. And now that President Biden has done, all hell did not break loose. And I think this is an important lesson here for Washington.
And the two know each other well. We all remember when Biden went to Ankara just after the failed 2016 coup. But of course, Merve, it's about more than just personal chemistry here.
Absolutely. I mean, President Biden, of course, has a long history with Erdogan, but also his administration, because many members of the Biden administration come from the Obama administration. So they all have seen the evolution of Turkey over the last 10, 20 years under President Erdogan's leadership. And most of these people, I think, including President Biden, embraced Erdogan for a long time, particularly in the Obama years, and were utterly disappointed with the way he cast himself, President Erdogan cast himself as a Muslim Democrat, and seemed to be giving a promise that he could really reconcile Turkey's sort of Muslim piety with a democratic governance. But over the years, he has ruled Turkey more and more autocratically. And as Turkey became more authoritarian at home, it became also quite much more aggressive in its foreign policy and abroad. So there's been a big disillusionment, I think, on the part of many members of the Biden administration and the president himself with President Erdogan. And so that's why we're seeing a much less tolerant Washington towards Erdogan today than we did 10 years ago.
Or perhaps you could see it that they're putting aside the differences over the Armenian genocide because that NATO summit is going to matter, Yavuz Beydar. What with the U.S. and Turkey on the same side when it comes to the recent spike in tension in the Black Sea. We all recall a few weeks ago Ukraine's president visiting Ankara. For the first time in a while, U.S. and Turkish interests are aligned on.
As much as the domestic scene goes, also the foreign policy is in turmoil. Erdogan is walking a tightrope walk, if you will, about many issues in region-wise, foreign policy-wise. And he seems to, by his choices and a series of erratic decisions, place Turkey in a sort of a limbo in terms of alliances, and also in the middle of all the tension that's now being escalating with Ukraine as epicenter. And not really is Erdogan approaching directly to Moscow or Putin, but playing, again, a tightrope walk, because Turkey is busy, has been busy selling drones and increasing its military cooperation with Ukraine for a while. to the discontent of Putin and Lavrov and the team in Kremlin. And now with the sudden escalation of the tension in Ukraine, again, Turkey is placed in a corner where continued choices and decisions of Erdogan and his minor partner, ultranationalist MHP leader Devlet Bahçeli, will place Turkey in a even more squeezed position.
But how much of a corner, Yavuz, when for the first time in a while, he has an ally in Washington who's got Vladimir Putin as well in his sights? We remember Donald Trump was ambiguous when it came to Russia.
True, but this was now a new president, and the lines, the decisions, the positions and strategy seems to have changed radically now from Washington, and already a problematic partner within NATO, even barred and banned from certain delicate meetings within the transatlantic alliance. The confrontation seems rather inevitable between Washington and Ankara when the two leaders meet in a NATO summit.
Why?
Biden doesn't seem to blink because the issue of the purchase of the S-400 missile systems from Russia, Turkey doesn't back off, and continues the thesis that it is free and independent enough to continue even buy more Russian equipment, Russian armory. So this is going to be a huge tension moment because Biden administration made it very clear that this is not going to happen. Because if this happens, if this is allowed, this will set a very delicate precedent for the other NATO allies or the outside NATO allies of the United States. So this is a red line. And that red line, I think, is going to fume from the NATO summit on.
Yusuf Erim is with us from Istanbul, Turkey analyst at TRT World. Thanks for joining the conversation. Yusuf, we're looking ahead to that NATO summit in June. And on the one hand, we heard Recep Tayyip Erdoğan express his displeasure over the Armenian genocide. But again, it's that question of the more important pressing matter is what happens in the Black Sea. Is he going to get closer to Washington because of they're on the same side when it comes to Ukraine? Or, as you just heard Yavuz Baydar say, the issue of the sale of those S-400 Russian anti-aircraft missile systems is still going to weigh on relations?
Well, first of all, I think Turkey's going to employ a very balanced foreign policy in the Black Sea regarding tensions between Ukraine and Russia. Now, as the tensions first sparked, we see that Zelensky's first visit was to Ankara. It was a pre-planned visit, but he could have canceled this visit due to national security concerns. He didn't cancel the visit. And from what we saw of that press conference, the press conference was dominated by security concerns, and we saw solidarity between Zelensky and Erdogan versus Russia. Now, this definitely creates opportunities for the U.S.-Turkey relationship as well. But I think Biden missed a huge opportunity to be able to rally NATO behind Ukraine. And it seems that he was very, very soft when rhetorically, just a couple of weeks ago, he calls Putin killer, and then a phone call, and now a face-to-face. I would have liked to see Biden, the coalition builder, or at least the so-called coalition builder that he is, be able to rally the troops in NATO first and put forth a strong front versus Vladimir Putin. And that could have been much better for the health of NATO. Now, we know that the health of NATO has been questioned a lot lately, and this was a perfect opportunity. Now, when we see that NATO is not homogenous, not dynamic like it used to be, Vladimir Putin also sees that. And Biden lost this opportunity. Now, Turkey plays a very important role in this region. And before Zelensky came to Istanbul to meet with Recep Tayyip Erdoğan, Vladimir Putin called him as well, because both leaders understand that Turkey will play a very important role in anything that happens in the Black Sea. Turkey's support for Ukraine would be a big boost, but I highly doubt that Turkey would want to directly confront Russia because it also has interests going on with Russia. But I could see Turkey being part of some type of NATO coalition to support Ukraine if tensions get out of control and it spills over into some type of kinetic engagement. But would Turkey directly confront Russia? No. It would do what it has done over the past 6-7 years, which is proxy confrontation, which makes the foreign policy portfolio between Ankara and Moscow still manageable.
A bit of a balancing act. Jasper Mortimer, is that the way things look? As you just heard there from Yusuf, the fact that the Russians have now pulled their troops back, lowering the temperature on the Black Sea.
Yes, look, I do agree that Turkey's relationship with Russia is multifaceted. Turkey still gets a lot of its energy from Russia. It is not going to declare war on Moscow. I think it will try and manage the situation. When the chips are down, it will side with NATO, but it will try to avoid confrontation. I just want to say that, you know, technically Biden and Erdogan are allies, but they are certainly not friends. You know, Biden hadn't spoken to Recep Tayyip Erdoğan for 3 months. The first time he spoke to Erdogan was on the eve of this Armenian genocide declaration, when he phoned him to tell him that he was going to use the G word. The two men don't like each other. They may express the determination to work together and to get along. But underlying that, there is nowhere near the rapport that it used to exist between Donald Trump and Erdogan.
When we come back, we're going to look at something else important that Turkey's president said this Monday when he spoke, and that is an extension of COVID lockdown till May the 17th. Stay with us. You're watching the France 24 debate.
Reporters, exclusive insights, the stories that matter, real people all around the world. France 24's international correspondents witness the news as it happens, where it happens, and they bring it to you.
Join me every week for a new edition of Reporters on France 24 and France24.com.
Residents from France's disadvantaged suburbs tell their own stories and take the viewers beyond the usual clichés about the French banlieue.
Sur le plan humain, c'est une expérience de fou en fait.
Les habitants valent beaucoup mieux que ce qu'on en dit.
Tu rends fier ta ville, les gens qui, quand ils me voient dans la rue, me disent « Je suis fier de toi, je t'ai vu passer à la télé, c'est bien comment t'as parlé, tu nous as bien représentés ».
Watch their daily reality in the Banlieue Project on France 24 and France24.com. Culture Daily. Every day, France 24 fills you in on the latest in the world of culture. In your Encore magazine, meet the artists, get to know them and their work. Watch them and listen to them talking about their creations and the era we live in. Stay up to date with all things cultural in France and around the world. Get your culture fix daily on France 24 and France24.com.
Welcome back. Before we resume the France 24 debate, some of the stories we're following for you in the newsroom. Cafes and restaurants open for outdoor seating for 3/4 of Italy's regions for the first time. The Prime Minister, meanwhile, unveiling, quote, epic reforms, part of a post-pandemic €222 billion recovery plan. As Iranian nuclear negotiators head back to Vienna, another year behind bars handed down in Tehran to dual British national Nazanin Zaghari-Ratcliffe, this on a charge dating back to 2009 of spreading propaganda against the system. Russian authorities suspend the offices of the Anti-Corruption Foundation of jailed Kremlin critic Alexei Navalny. This ahead of a possible outright ban of the group as an extremist organization. French oil giant Total indefinitely suspends work to tap Africa's largest liquefied natural gas project, this in the wake of a radical insurgency overrunning Pemba in northern Mozambique at the start of the month. Welcome back, or welcome if you're just joining us. It's the France 24 debate, and we're looking at how President Recep Tayyip Erdoğan of Turkey is rolling with the punches in these times of pandemic and shifting international alliances. With us from Istanbul, Yusuf Arim, Turkey analyst for television station TRT World. From Washington, Merve Tayyarolu, Turkey program coordinator for the Project on Middle East Democracy. From southern France, Yavuz Baydar is the editor-in-chief of the news website Aval. And France 24 correspondent Jasper Mortimer is with us as well. Now, those tensions we mentioned at the outset over the U.S. recognizing the Armenian genocide, they weighed on the currency this Monday. Turkey's lira, though, rebounding since this after flirting with all-time lows against the U.S. dollar. As you can see, it's been a downward spiral. Tensions over Armenia, weighing on the minds of those already unsure about the current investment environment in Turkey ever since last month's sacking of the central bank governor. Thomas Waterhouse has more.
Turkey's constitution has already been changed 19 times since 1980, and following a referendum in 2017, the text was radically rewritten to scrap the role of prime minister and hand Erdogan even greater powers to pick ministers, oversee the budget, and enact certain laws by decree. And now he thinks it needs changing again.
Perhaps the time has come for Turkey to discuss a new constitution. This work needs to be conducted before the eyes of the people and with the participation of all of their representatives and in a transparent manner.
Despite Erdogan insisting this process will be democratic, the opposition says it's simply an attempt to divert attention away from the economic, social and sanitary problems on the home front and away for the president to tighten his grip on power. You might think these images from March show that the president can still fill stadiums, but many of the supporters were actually bussed in for the occasion. The popularity of his party has now tumbled below 30%, and with Turkey set to elect its new parliament and president in 2 years' time, that makes the forecast somewhat bleak and may explain some recent shock decisions coming from Ankara. In the wee hours of March the 20th, Erdogan triggered a financial earthquake when he abruptly sacked the governor of Turkey's central bank in a move which hammered the lira. Some observers say the firing could have been designed to pave the way for the return of the president's son-in-law and former finance minister. This wish to protect allies and the party faithful led to months of often violent protests earlier this year when Erdogan appointed a former AK party candidate as rector of a top Istanbul university. The interior minister called the demonstrating students LGBT deviants, while the president called them terrorists.
And speaking of terror accusations, 108 members of Turkey's main pro-Kurdish party, the HDP, their trial getting underway in Ankara. They could face up to life in prison over violence that left 37 dead at the Syrian border back in 2014 when Islamic militants were attacking Kobane, again just across the other side of the border. They're charged with homicide and disrupting the unity and territorial integrity of the state. That's a long laundry list we saw there, Merve Tayyarolu, of different issues domestically where the president seems to be taking on all comers. What's it all about?
It's all about power, of course. As I think the clip showed us also that because of how bad Turkey's economy has been mismanaged, the currency and the economy is doing really badly, and that's why President Erdogan and his party's support is at a historic low. So I think the president is quite afraid that in 2 years he might not be able to, and his party might not be able to deliver or receive enough of the votes to be able to continue to rule Turkey. And Erdogan is first and foremost a strongman, and so his reaction, like all strongmen, to this faltering popularity in Turkey is to dial up his repression of the opposition, and that's why we're seeing this, I think, scrambling and frantic policies of trying to take over institutions like the central bank and the Boğaziçi University, and the crackdown on the HDP, which I should note is the third biggest party in Turkey. So it's a pro-Kurdish party, but it's by no means a marginal party. I think we should consider it as part of the mainstream opposition. And the fact that the government's response to this faltering popularity is to crack down on this party and the political opposition through these kinds of mass trials that look very politically motivated. And this is because of the decay in rule of law in Turkey over the past few years. I think all of this is President Erdogan scrambling to try to shore up his popularity, distract people from the problem of the economy, and try to somehow politic in a way that he can he can weather through the next elections in Turkey. But I'm not sure if that's going to work, given just how bad the economy actually is, and how little tolerance people have left.
How bad the economy is, Jasper Mortimer, 2 years is a long time in politics, and the Turks have seen downturns in their economy before.
Yes, they have, but Merve is right. We're very close to rock bottom. You know, the lira has been dropping for about 18 months now. You know, one of the causes that the opposition has been waging, attacking the government on, is the amount of money that the government spent on trying to prop up the lira. You know, the government, it was disclosed when the central bank governor was fired in November, and the finance minister resigned hours later. It was disclosed that Turkey had spent 128 billion on trying to prop up the lira, to stop the lira from reaching 7 lira to the dollar. Today, the lira is about 8.5 to the dollar. And the opposition has made a lot of hay out of asking the question, what happened to that 128 billion?
Yeah, it's become a hashtag.
It's infuriated.
We can just show it's become a hashtag. The opposition CHP party, the hashtag "Where's the 128 billion?" as in $1 billion. And they've even had, Jasper, a website. I hope my pronunciation's okay. $128milliard.net to show some of the stuff that costs a lot less, everything from a loaf of bread to Neymar and the New York Yankees baseball team. Jasper, the CHP, the centrist opposition party, making political hay with this, but of course, how long can they, quote unquote, dine out on this issue?
I don't think for very long. I don't think it will be a major feature in the next elections. Those elections are scheduled for 23. There's a lot of talk that Erdogan will bring them forward, but I don't believe it. Erdogan is a very astute reader of voters' intentions. And at the moment, if elections were to be called, he would lose. He certainly doesn't look as if he can profit by calling elections early. You know, his government is failing on many fronts. You were mentioning just before the break the COVID crisis. You know, in February, we seemed to be winning the battle against COVID. And the death toll was down to 60 to 70 a day. You can say one person dead is too many. But for 60 to 70 people deaths a day during the pandemic, when Turkey has a population of 84 million people, that's pretty good. Well, now we're up to 350 deaths a day. We're getting about 38,000 new infections a day. The doctors in Istanbul have cried out for the whole city to go on full lockdown. And there's been tremendous opposition, enmity between the doctors. The Turkish Medical Association is firmly in the opposition camp, and President Erdogan. And people have thought that it's the political differences between them that has caused Erdogan to take no notice of the doctors. But until today, he did seem to be listening, because he. Tonight he did seem to be listening, because he has declared in this speech that from Thursday evening at 7 o'clock, the country will go, the whole country, not just Istanbul, will go on full lockdown until May the 17th. That's the end of the Eid al-Fitr that ends the Ramadan month. You know, it does seem as if he's recognized that the COVID crisis is out of control and drastic measures are needed. The one area where Turkey has done well on COVID, one has to say, is in vaccination. It has vaccinated 2 jabs, the full vaccination, 8 million people. And that means that nearly 10% of the population has been fully vaccinated.
Yusuf Arim, lots to unpack there. Let's begin with the managing of the current currency crisis and the sacking of the governor of the central bank. Is it a legitimate question? You know, the money spent, the equivalent of $128 billion to try to prop up a currency that tumbled anyways?
Look, the Turkish economy, which has always been Erdogan's bread and butter, it's gotten him elected, is a credit-based growth model. So obviously low interest rates are needed, and Turkey needs access to foreign markets, to foreign currency, to be able to provide that currency and keep that high growth going. And when we look at, especially the last 20 years, we see that AK Party well outperformed economically in the early years. And then ever since the 2008 mortgage crisis, it stumbled a little. It was just picking back up. You have a coup attempt. You have COVID. You have U.S. sanctions on Brunson. You have U.S. sanctions now for via Katsa. So there's been outside shocks. But when we look at the economic indicators right now, we see that Turkey's economic indicators do not warrant the Turkish lira or do not warrant the Turkish stock market being this low. So the indicators are very, very strong. Once Turkey surpasses these outside shocks and is able to manage them, it will be able to prop up its currency again. Now, how the $128 billion was spent to fight off the sell-off in the Turkish lira, that's a matter of opinion. Some people might say it was right to intervene, keep price stability as a priority. Some people may say you should have let the Turkish lira go into free fall as well. That's a matter of opinion. Different central bankers will have different opinions on that as well.
Ultimately, Yusuf, aren't the markets spooked because the president intervened and sacked the governor of the central bank?
I think there was a difference in opinion on how the central bank should have been managed. And the president, if he wanted to go a different way, just as he has the power to appoint the central banker, he has the power to sack the central banker. I feel like the markets did like Naci Akbal. I thought he was the right choice. We have to see how the new central banker is going to be when he comes in. He's been now at the helm of the central bank, I believe, 3 or 4 weeks. So he does need some time to be able to gain that credibility going forward.
All right, before I ask you about COVID, let me just get a quick reaction on this from Yavuz Baydar. Right now, how do you see it going forward? Can markets be reassured?
It doesn't look like that, because the choice of the central bank governor is, after Naci Akbal, is clearly a choice of Erdogan to take full control of central bank. His pattern has always been to subordinate each and any institution that comes his way, and central bank was one of the last final institutions that he had his eyes on, and his theory still stands. It's the lower the rate, the lower the inflation, and that has turned into a very dangerous laboratorium, trial and error basis, and that has taken its toll. First, on the population, of course, the inflation is hiking, unemployment is at its 30%, and also, as mentioned here, the mistrust of the foreign investors, the outside actors watching this experiment going on. They are still not very encouraged of what they have been seeing. So it is a trap that Erdogan has put to Turkish people, and also Turkey as a potentially very international, very strong international player in the global markets. It's not going the way that people domestically see. It's not going the way that international investors, etc., do want to see that. So it will be, it will go on like this, downhill for who knows how long.
Well, one of the key factors, of course, is how the COVID pandemic is managed. The fact that Yavuz, the fact that President Erdogan has now taken this step to announce this lockdown through to the end of Ramadan on May the 17th. Will that be enough to save the summer tourism season?
That's what Erdogan hopes, of course. But this policy of battling COVID was so zigzaggy from the very beginning, and the Turkish Doctors Association (TTB) has been proven right, because they had been warning, and there was a sort of a science committee that established by Erdogan administration, which could not raise its voice because of fear and intimidation, because of being demonized, fear of being demonized, and it has been all up to the TTB doctors bravely speaking out, calling time after time after time for harder measures, lockdowns, continuous, constant, consistent lockdowns, which were not obeyed. And it has, of course, had some religious aspect to this all, because the mosques and the Diyanet, the Directorate of Religious Affairs, the local religious communities, etc., and also business, pro-government business circles, etc. They pressurized the government and put it in a very hard position, and the result is this. Of course, it may be too late. It has pressures, and zigzagginess was also, and another aspect was so obvious that Turkey was very, very late in diversifying the vaccines. It totally dependent on Sinovac, the Chinese vaccine, which I think is TTB has very strong doubts about, 50% efficacy. And now, belatedly, Pfizer and the others are coming into the scene. But overall, I think this is a too late, too little kind of action.
Yusuf Erim, you agree that it's too late?
No, it's not too late. I think it was a very smart decision to make this lockdown. Probably should have come a week earlier, but I think it was to save the tourism season. Very important. I believe about a 3-week lockdown. So we're probably going to be looking at much, much lower cases by May 17th. I think Turkey right now is mostly concentrated on getting its population vaccinated, and especially working on developing its indigenous vaccine. I think that will be the game changer for Turkey, because it doesn't want to fall prey or fall victim to this vaccine diplomacy that's going on. It was expecting more vaccines from China. That seems to be on hold right now. So it has been shifting to Pfizer, BioNTech as well. It's trying to secure more of that vaccine. But again, Turkey will finally be out of the clear once it has its own vaccine, and the Turkish health minister expects that to be towards the end of the summer right now. When we do look at the cases, especially the surge lately in cases, the Turkish president is trying to have a good balance between obviously protecting his citizens, but also protecting their living as well. If the economy was on better footing, we could have seen harder lockdowns earlier, but there are concerns about how people are making their living, of course, and that's a concern throughout the world. This is a shared experience. Americans, the French, the British, the Germans all have the same concerns, as all economies have felt the hit, have seen a slowdown. Turkey obviously having other factors impacting its economy as well, so we're seeing a more magnified effect in Turkey. So the president trying to take into account protecting his economy as well as protecting the health of the citizens, and it had worked until late. I understand as the weather gets warmer, people do want to go outside. People have been tired of being basically under some form of lockdown, some form of pandemic depression over the last year. I can sympathize. I think we all feel it as well. And there are strong conditions in place, but unfortunately, people aren't implementing these either. There's still people walking around without masks, regardless of it being mandatory. There's still people not recognizing social distancing, even though everyone knows about it. So there's only so much of a government can do, and at the end of the day, there is some responsibility on the citizens. And I'm not just talking about Turkey, I'm talking about everywhere in the world. At the end of the day, governments can only take so many actions. The responsibility does lay on us to be able to implement what these conditions are.
Mevlut Tarulu, you agree?
I live in the United States, where we've had a very good example of what it looks like to badly manage a pandemic and manage it well. We've seen a huge change in the way the pandemic has been managed in the United States just when through the administration change this year with President Trump's reaction to the pandemic versus President Biden's reaction. America's doing so much better now. So I think at the end of the day, there is a way, that there is a lot that governments can do, and it's important to be able to manage these kinds of crises. Turkey's big problem right now is that there is no real meritocracy, there's no due process, there's no rule of law, and this is why these are the biggest problems for the health and the wealth of Turkish citizens. These are the biggest obstacles facing the Turkish tourism sector. These are the problems why Turkey doesn't have a good an ecosystem for foreign investors, and why Turkey's economy is being mismanaged too. So I think that all of the problems that Turkey is facing, yes, the pandemic has definitely exacerbated Turkey's problems, but the economy was not doing well before then. It was already deteriorating pretty badly. So I think if we want to look at the root causes of Turkey's problems, we should look at the way it is being governed and the attacks on Turkey's human rights and democracy in the past few years.
And that will be the final word for now. Mevlut Tarulu, I want to thank you so much for joining us from Washington. I want to thank Yusuf Erim in Istanbul, Jasper Mortimer in Ankara, Yavuz Beydar for being with us from southern France. I want to thank you for joining us here in the France 24 debate.